Cool. Welcome everyone to another community outreach. As you guys are aware of the antitrust policy notice, as well as the code of conduct. If you're not familiar with it, please familiarize yourself with it. We do post a link of this in the meeting minutes, so it's easily accessible. Okay, so for today's agenda, we've got some introductions, a community update, a short community update, and then Harvey's also going to jump in there with me. We've got Pat. Pat's recorded Neoprism for us. So that will be our community spotlight section. And then Esteban will discuss the working group and integrating Identus and dApps. And then we've got a Q&A section where the community is free to ask anything that they like. Okay, so do we have any new participants on the call today? Hi, do you maybe want to introduce yourself? Not this sound. Oh, hey.
My name is Heikki. I'm from Fairway, one of the executives and founders from there. Just
Nice.
I'm a bit sick, but I'll be watching what's happening and so on.
Cool. Welcome. Welcome. Nice to have you. The last time I spoke to Henrik was a while ago. Nice to have you joining us as well. Okay, so for community updates, I know someone shared this last week, and I thought we'll share it this week as well. But I mean, we did have the Evo recently. If you guys would like to see the panel discussion with David, Charles, Mike, and C-Sign, I will post the link a little bit later in the chat. And then there's also a fireside chat with David Harding and Mike Wall, who's the CPO of IOG. And then just on the side note, we do have a Prism Sandbox. So there is some exciting new features coming out. Prism Sandbox will allow you to connect to testnet. By when it's coming out, I can't define that just yet, but that is something that is in the works at the moment. And then just a little bit something that popped up at the moment, and Javi, maybe you want to share a little bit more about the features that are up and coming as well.
Yes, so I do not have the full list mentally right now. So unfortunately, I am going to do a brief introduction of some feature that goes in the next release,
Sure.
which is likely going to go out in the next 2 weeks. And then part of the community requested to have connectionless flows, which means that in order to achieve a verification flow or an issuance flow, you do not need an existing connection anymore. Then instead, what you do is you call the issuer or the verifier API to generate an out-of-band either verification request or issuance request, as if it was a DITCOM invitation link. So then instead of establishing the connection, what you will do is that you will request the presentation definition and it will be stored. So you will not need that pre-existing connection, which is going to be time saver. And in my opinion, that is the right way of achieving what we wanted to achieve. So yeah, that's going out. That's one of the big features that goes out. Also in the TypeScript repository, we are working on a faster and better way to handle our tests and build process, which is likely also going to go out. And yeah, the full list of things that we release will be announced in the proper release channel. So yeah, thank you guys. That's all.
Awesome. Thanks, Javi. I'm sure a couple of people in the community that would be happy about that. And I know Mix as well would be excited to hear that news.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay. Okay. So we're on to our community spotlight section. Pat, who couldn't join us today, did this in his spare time. So I will be playing you guys a little bit of a video about what Neoprism is about. Enjoy.
Hey guys, today I'm gonna be talking about the Prism node implementation in Rust. This is my pet project, Neo Prism. So yeah, about myself, I am the contributor of the Identus project. So I'm mostly working on the cloud agent side of things. So yeah, let's take a look at what this NeoPrism thing does. So NeoPrism is the Prism node implementation in Rust. So it is aimed to be thin and lightweight, and it talks to the Kata node directly without using dbsync. So if you check in the Docker compose, all we need is 2 containers. One is for the database, another one for the Prism node itself. And when you start up the Prism node, the argument that you have to provide is this Cardano node address. So if you have your own node running, you can associate this to connect to your local node, and the sync process is going to be much faster. So yeah, let's take a look at this running. So if you take a look at the home directory, the root repo, and follow this link, there's the public instance of the Prism node in Rust. And here you can try to resolve Prism did. So if you enter some did and then resolve, ideally the did document should show up here, but this is not a valid did. So yeah. And in the Explorer tab, you can see how much has the node been syncing. So here, the node is syncing up until the 133 slot, which is almost at the tip or at the tip. Yeah. So yeah, I think the latest block, the latest block is 133 million something. So we are actually at the tip of the mainnet, and every did that the node has been observed is going to be listed out here. So this did, you can actually click on it, and you're gonna be brought to the resolver page, and you can see what's inside this did. So here, for example, we have 3 keys, and then here down below there's the debugging section. So you can see where is this operation being published. So at this slot, this block, on this date time, and we have some protobuf message for debugging. And if there's any error about this operation, you're gonna see the error stack here. So yeah, there's quite a lot of it on mainnet already. And there's also the pre-prod instance that I have been self-hosting. So pre-prod, just add pre-prod to the NeoPrism, and you can see what's inside the pre-prod network. So yeah, quite a lot of did here, and we are at 69 million slot, and you can see the network identifier at the top right. Yeah, so if you check the latest did on pre-prod, you can see there's so we have some service using csign endpoint, and it has been published somewhere today. And this is the content of the operation. So yeah, that's a main use case right now, but I haven't added like the universal reservoir API. So that's something to look at in the future. So yeah, and you can also self-host the node easily. So if you check out the quick start section, there's the public demo instance and the self-hosting. And for the self-hosting, you can just clone the directory or clone the repo, and then follow this instruction. So yeah, let me try to do that here. So just clone the project, and then cd to the Docker directory. So Docker, yeah, and you see the Docker compose file. And if you follow the command, you can actually run this command, and everything is going to be built from source. But I have already built my image locally, so just to save some time, I'm gonna just run this. And here we can see that the node is already running and it's listening to this port 8080. So just follow this localhost port 8080, and you see that there's the same UI for your local instance. And if you check the Explorer tab, you can see that it is start syncing from the 71 million slot, which is like the genesis of the Prism on mainnet. And as the node starts syncing, you can see that the did start to show up. So you can check what's inside this date. And like the first one has been like in 2022, 2 years ago. Yeah, and then more this starts to show up, and every date you can inspect what's inside. Yeah, so that's pretty much all it does right now. And yeah, if you have some proposal or anything, just open the issue or post something in the discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Sweet. Thanks, Pat.
Hey guys.
Oops. Thanks, Pat, for that awesome demo. As mentioned, if you guys do want to check it out, you can go have a look over here in the Project Hub and the Neoprism. And yeah, make use of Neoprism. The link to mainnet and pre-prod is there as well. I'll upload the recording a little bit later if you guys do want a video reference as well. Okay, next up we've got Esteban. Esteban's gonna share a little bit around his opinion around Identus and dApps.
Hello. Let me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay.
We can see the presentation.
Okay. I'm trying to find the participant list just to see if someone raised a hand. Okay. So, let me turn this on. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, this is a draft presentation of something that I have been working on for a while. The idea of this is eventually to create a working group to tackle this problem. My initial idea was trying to establish a working group following design science research approach, just to get the flywheel going with the working group. The thing that I noticed is that for this particular topic, basically that can be interpreted as integration between decentralized applications and SSI technology. Really, there is not too much going on. So trying to find references on this matter turned it quite a bit challenging. So I had to discard the idea of the DSR approach and try something different. So the idea of this presentation is just to showcase the topic to the community, see if it sparks interest from the people. And the idea is to, once we get people on board, we can maybe create a formal working group to tackle the matter in question. So what is this about? So in essence, what we are trying to do here is to understand what is the proposition of Identus and what is the proposition of the decentralized applications. Figure it out how can you mix both things together and hopefully achieve new forms of value delivery or new use cases that have not been explored in the past. So in a nutshell, that's like the goal. See how can you merge these two things together and get something out of it that is useful. So for this, I guess the easiest way to approach it initially is to try to understand things at a very high level. How they, what are the propositions that Identus has, and what is the proposition that decentralized applications have. See what they are, what are their limitations, to start narrowing down these things to eventually get to the point that you can actually perform a technical implementation of this integration of topics. So, given say that, from the Identus front, well, you start to think what is the things that Identus offers. Identus is an implementation of the layer 1, 2, and 3 of the Trust over IP technology stack. I guess that giving our audience, hopefully that don't require much explanation. But basically what that means is that with the stuff that Identus has implemented, you pretty much has three very high level features. One is credential exchange protocols. So with Identus, you can do credential issuance and presentations of proofs. There are different ways to do that. It could be via DITCOM, or it could be with OID for BC. Those are types of protocols that Identus has available. Identus also offers secure messaging. You can have chat applications built on top of Identus. And also, well, Identus enables the digital signatures that are based on DITs, pretty much something similar to what CSign does. They leverage this feature to create their solution. So the thing with this is these are like the three high-level features that Identus provides. And once you have these things available, basically what it enables you is to build trust applications and ecosystems, basically leveraging this functionality. And then you can create the trust over IP layer 4, where all the trust applications live, and all these futuristic ecosystems of credentials that are around. So other thing that is important to highlight is that Identus is not an out-of-the-box end user solution. Identus provide components, protocols, infrastructure, however you want to call it. But in the end, the end user solution is something that needs to be built on top. So that is the so-called layer 4 of the Trust over IP stack. On the side of decentralized applications, well, what they offer, they offer things like DeFi in all their flavors. You have a decentralized exchange, you have lending applications, you have liquidity providers, you have a decentralized insurance. I mean, there are a lot of things that are being explored in the DApp space. You have, of course, NFT marketplaces. You have things like gaming with tokenomics, these funny things that show up every now and then that are pretty much games that offer some sort of rewards based on participation. So, I mean, there are an incredible amount of use cases for the apps. One thing that they are different from Identus is that the apps are focused to end users. Usually you have, with your DApp, you have some sort of interface with an end user. Is there a question?
Oh, Henrik has his hand raised.
Yeah. Hi, Esteban. Very interesting. I was thinking in the end of presentation, since you might tell it already, but I'm interested in this case, are the DIDs connected to like blockchain addresses, like for example, Cardano addresses? If you're interacting with smart contracts and dApps, is the Identus SSI identity somehow going to be associated with the blockchain address, or how does that connection work exactly? Thank you.
I mean, yeah, no, that is actually one of the questions that don't have an answer. And that's the idea of creating the working group, because the perception of what this integration means varies depending on who you ask. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that. I mean, right now there is no integration between the Adit and a Cardano address, but maybe something that is needed at some point, and maybe eventually can be some sort of feature that is necessary to implement to have some particular use case sorted out. Any other question? Okay, so continuing with the conversation here, but it's more like a monologue. There is some distinction that needs to be made in the context of decentralized applications, because one thing is the decentralized application, another is the smart contract. So when you talk about the app specifically, you are talking about all the package, all the things, the components, integrations, all the stuff that you need to operate the application. So there is UI in there, there is some sort of storage, sometimes, usually IPFS when you are talking about the apps, but not necessarily, it can be traditional database. There is also the need of wallet integration between the DApp and the end user cryptocurrency wallet. There is also integration with oracles in case that you require data that is external from the blockchain um, into your use case. That the apps also need to integrate in some way with the blockchain node to get the transactions into the network. And also a very important component of the decentralized applications is the smart contract protocol. Concretely speaking about the smart contracts, well, this is just one definition. And well, the smart contracts are programmable protocols that are used essentially to add conditions to blockchain asset transactions. So this is like a very high level abstraction of smart contracts, but the thing is that blockchains are pretty much about transferring assets. These assets can be cryptocurrencies or tokens or NFTs or synthetic representations of real world assets. So that smart contracts allows people to customize a protocol with a very specific set of conditions that need to be met to be able to have some sort of a transfer of assets from one account to another. So this is just to frame the concept that, okay, decentralized applications are the whole implementation, all the things that you need to have in place for them to work, and the smart contract is just a piece of the decentralized applications that run specifically on the blockchain. So then it becomes the questions about what is this integration, and here is where the questions can start to arise, because you ask different people and you will have different interpretations of what integrating these two technology means. In my case, the two conditions or the two interpretations of these questions is integrating Identus and the apps is about conditioning the execution of a digital asset transfer to the fulfillment of a verifiable presentation. So this is one interpretation that I give to this topic. You have a transaction that moves assets from one place to another, but for that to happen, the user need to present some sort of specific credential to meet some sort of requirement that is needed in your business use case for that to happen. That is thinking more on the verifiable credential scope, but you can also think maybe a little bit in a lower level. and maybe you are making your requirement more aligned with the validation of a signature. So that will be more like in the scope of a DIT. So let's say a user have a DIT, and this DIT obviously is capable of doing public key cryptography. There is some sort of signature from this DIT that is required to meet some sort of condition. So these are like very broad definitions, but I think that they match together, or at least in my conception, it may be wrong. What is the things that Identus offers, and what is the things that decentralized applications offer, and where do they may be able to meet together? And then the third option is it could be something else. As who was talking, I think it was Henrik, mentioning like it may be a matter of having some sort of matching between a DIT and an account in the blockchain. And it could be another interpretation as well. I mean, this is very, very open. The idea of this conversation is just to start the topic going and hopefully create a working group where we can gather more information and more feedback or expectations of what this should mean. The another thing that you need to consider when you are starting to dig a little bit deeper, not too much deeper, but a little bit deeper in the technicalities, is that all these technologies have constraints or properties, or well, I call it here peculiarities, that you need to consider when you are planning to do some sort of integration. From the Identus side, well, Identus pretty much is about interaction between agents or wallets, or agents and wallets. If you are thinking about using the Identus Cloud Agent, well, you are pretty much bound to interacting through an API. If you are planning to use the Edge agents, well, we provide 3 specific SDKs implemented in 3 different languages, and they have a specific purpose. Also, if you are using Edge agents, well, you need to put a mediator into the mix. And independently of if you are using cloud or Edge agent in your Identus implementation, you always need to consider that there is a transport layer between the interactions. Usually is HTTP, sometimes is scanning a QR code or copy pasting a URL. The thing is that there are interactions in there that need to happen. Other thing that is important is that the protocols that Identus implement, well, they are not deterministic by nature. Some considerations is, let's say you are talking about presenting a verifiable proof. Well, this proof can be valid now, but it may be invalid in 5 seconds, maybe because it expired, maybe because it was revoked, or maybe because the issuer of that particular credential was banned from the ecosystem. So this is important when you start thinking of mixing this with blockchain, because blockchain has a very deterministic nature. One other thing to consider is the asynchronous nature of these protocols. When you put into the mix, well, they are asynchronous by definition, but when you also consider things like user consent, many of these protocols require user consent to move forward. For example, the presentation of a credential or a request of a presentation. So there are things that you need to have in mind before thinking about integration. Also, there are peculiarities from the smart contract side. The smart contracts usually are very constrained and restricted. The languages that are available to build a smart contract, no
I
matter
am
the
trying
blockchain.
to fix it. I don't know what is happening. So
I think someone.
I muted
Okay.
them.
So yeah, I mean, there are limitations in the smart contract languages. Usually they don't have all the libraries that you require. That tends to be a problem, especially when you have a specific need for a cryptographic function or cryptographic algorithm that may or may not be available in your blockchain smart contract language. Well, other thing is that the smart contracts are deterministic, so that's a different from Identus protocols. The smart contracts always need to resolve to the same outcome. Also, there are restrictions in the execution environment. Smart contracts normally run in some sort of interpreter or some sort of virtual machine that is very constrained in resources. There is a well-known limitation that smart contracts cannot interact with external data or systems or services. And for that, the use of oracles is required. And yeah, I mean, going back to the matter of limited computational resources, well, the execution of a smart contract is going to be constrained by memory usage, transaction size, CPU cycles. So they usually need to be very, let's say, atomic, very expedited. They need to execute in a matter of seconds, well, probably milliseconds, and they can't consume too much resources from the network. So other set of peculiarities or things that you need to consider when talking about integrating all these technologies is in the case of DApps, is that DApps have an off-chain part and an on-chain part. The off-chain part is where you have the front end, when you have the user interactions, where are the things that trigger the transactions. And then you have the backend part, where usually you have a little bit more of a business logic in place. How do you interact with oracles, external services? How do you pull data from other places? Sometimes you do a little bit of data processing on the backend because it's too heavy to do it on chain. And also this backend part is the part where you create your transaction before sending it to a node of the network to be processed. Some blockchains have hybrid smart contracts where you have the smart contract that have an off-chain part and an on-chain part, and that's also a consideration. The on-chain part of decentralized application, well, this is where the decentralized functionality happens, the true decentralized part, and is going to be restricted or limited for, well, all the things that I mentioned before that comes with smart contracts. So here is where we start having open questions, and that's why I would like to hopefully have eventually enough audience to get the working group moving forward, because then you start to face this question of where do I perform the integration? Is something that needs to be off-chain? I would say that is probably a natural fit, given that Identus pretty much is API, it depends on HTTP to communicate agents. So my viewpoint, and this is just my opinion in particular, is that the better place to achieve these integrations is with the creation of some sort of a Oracle / SSI agent that can take care of all the interactions from the Identus side and prepare all the things for the transaction. Other option, when available, is to do an hybrid. Maybe some part of this integration is to be done off-chain, and the other part goes on-chain. It would be like a mix. This requires more exploration to see what that may mean. And the other option is to try to attempt to do the integration on-chain. The challenge with that is that given that the smart contracts have a lot of constraints, I believe that doing an integration there probably is going to be reduced to just a matter of validating a specific signature in a piece of data that managed to get into the smart contract. So this is one of the open questions that are there. Unfortunately, there is no response, at least not from my side. And the other thing that is also a challenge is the problem with the wallets. Decentralized applications, they depend of having a cryptocurrency wallet to operate. Identus eventually also requires some sort of a wallet application to operate. So the thing is that when you are talking about, okay, let's integrate this together, you tend to have the problem like, okay, I have my cryptocurrency wallet, I have my identity wallet, and then the user experience seems to be quite a bit ugly, to say the least. So there is also a matter that requires exploration. Maybe at some point it is required to have a wallet that integrates both worlds. And there are a lot of challenges that comes with that, but it's also an open question. So basically that's the end of my presentation. I mean, this is a draft presentation. This is the first that I present this. I hope it made sense. I think that there are a raised hand.
Yeah, got a raise hand from Henrik.
Yeah, thanks, Esteban, again. I was asking two questions. One of them is if you're talking blockchain, is it mainly Cardano now, or is Midnight also part of this conversation currently? And whether like Midnight would solve some of these issues better, for example, the deterministic side or like atomic transactions, when you have I guess in Midnight ability to do off chain or like in the device, the smart contract execution. Could this like help in some of those smart contract related problems, and has that been in a discussion in Identus? That's my first question.
Yeah, in that case, well, this presentation was thought of as very general. No matter if you're talking about Cardano, Midnight, or Ethereum, or whatever. The thing with blockchains, well, I'm not sure Midnight. I mean, probably Midnight is the same. Pretty much all of them have these restrictions at the smart contract level. And that is something that is inherent to how blockchain operates. And I'm not sure if Midnight, for some reason, has something different. I will need to dig deeper in their technology. But I'm kind of almost sure that probably suffers the same challenges.
Second question I had, if I may, was about the like trust triangle and so on. Like, has anybody been researching, for example, smart contracts or blockchain in part of the issuer verifier side? So far, is there any new knowledge about that? Basically, interacting as a part of the SSI network itself.
Yeah, no, that will be pretty much that a topic of research that we are trying to move forward with this initiative and hopefully creating a working group. I'm aware of one implementation at some point that used the old version of Atala Prism, the version 1.4, that had some sort of integration with the DApp. The thing is, I have been trying to track that implementation, and I need to contact someone to see if they can give me some place where I can find the resources of that. But so far, I am only aware of one where you have some sort of integration between, well, it was Atala Prism 1.4, so it's already probably obsolete technology, but probably it can help to give some insights on how to perform this implementation where you have trust triangle and smart contracts use it at the same time. Björn?
Yeah, first of all, Esteban, great job. So thanks for spending the time of like defining the problem. And I think it is a pretty large problem space because as you said, there's no clear definition what integration means. So I would say it would be great if someone has a very specific use case they want to solve. And maybe they can present that to the working group so that the working group can focus on that. Otherwise, we have to, I guess, like define a problem ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's usually a good approach because well, it's difficult to solve a problem that you don't know what it is. But yeah, I mean, obviously these things are always open. If anyone has an idea of a specific problem that can be used as a use case, guinea pig to drive forward with a working group, it would be great. If there is none, I guess we can just make one up just for the sake of creating momentum.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you saw this one, but Henrik has offered to come up with a specific use case. Is Henrik still on the call? Yeah, he is.
Oh, yeah, that-
thanks. I am.
Mhm.
We can discuss it in Discord, but we would for sure have ideas to put. So
Awesome.
I pushed chat for Esteban and Björn as well.
Cool.
Thanks.
Sounds
Oh,
great.
sure. Mhm. Okay.
Okay. I think we've come to the last part of the presentation, which is the Q&A. If anybody has some questions for the team, the rest of the community, now's your chance to go ahead and ask them. Okay, I tried to find some questions in the chat. Okay, seems like we have no questions for this round. I will be posting the meeting minutes a little bit later this evening or tomorrow morning, depending on when the recording's out. And yeah, see you guys next week at the maintainer and contributor call. Thanks everyone for
Bye.
joining.
Thank you, guys. See
Ciao,
ya.
ciao. Bye.
Bye.